This video is brought to you by BaseStrengthAI, which I am using to prep for Worlds. Join our growing Facebook community for more information on the app and everything else training. Is this you? Skinny, spindly forearms that barely qualify as two arms? Do you fear handshakes at important meetings? Do you avoid jars of pickles? Well, if that's the case, if you've got a weak wrist and a soft grip, I can help you out. My name's Alex Bromley, and I am a 20-year strongman competitor and coach. And grip is kind of a thing in what we do, and mine actually really used to suck. I used to leave a lot of points on the table because I couldn't finish frame carries or farmer walk races. And in addition, I had really small, pathetic forearms that did not do my physique any justice. But with this very simple list, and I'm telling you, it was not rocket science doing what I did, I was able to develop something that would hang with some of the best in the field.
Bromley fastest up into the tank.
This is me beating Larry Wheels heads up in a farmer's walk race. This is me axle clean and pressing each rep a 270-pound axle with a double overhand grip. And this is me with my wife Laura and son Theo. Yes, this is about grip because you need a strong grip to pull a baddie. Now, the first point that we have to get to is the why. Like I said, it's not genetics. It's not the lack of attachments or lack of all the tricks and books and tools. It's lack of commitment. And I know that that's what none of you want to hear. That's the patronizing advice. And I'm not just going to say do more grip work. There's a bit more to it than that. But it should be freeing and empowering to know that it is actually that simple. There's a reason that laborers, people that turn wrenches for a living, farm hands, people that shoe horses, accidentally get very strong hands and grips. You've never met somebody who's worked a long time as a blacksmith who did not have an impressive set of mitts on him. And it's because as long as those muscles are routinely getting used, routinely getting taxed, they develop over time. And if it's your job, you don't have the option of skipping out early to go to Whataburger after your workout. So in the vein of not overcomplicating shit, we're going to find things that carry over, that give a lot of bang for the buck, and things that don't require a ton of time that are easy to slip into our training. So the first real actionable piece of advice is to make your grip work part of your regular training instead of having it as some other feature that you might skip or forget about. Now, this is some of the most common old school wisdom that there is, and I'm going to expand on it a little bit, but not using straps, letting your grip and forearms get bigger and stronger in lockstep with your other movements, your rows, your deadlifts, your cleans, and so on. There's some wisdom to that. However, it is a bit incomplete. People end up going way too far with it. I do not recommend you limiting those movements because you're die hard about never strapping up. That creates a big problem, especially when you're talking about holding on to thin bars. If you're at a corporate gym, your palms are sweaty. I've had people who don't own chalk. They don't know how to mix grip. They're just doing double overhand with slippery palms on their deadlifts. And they could probably deadlift 315, but they're using 175 because that's all their hands can hold on to. That's not a great strategy. Now, another thing that makes this really easy to make it part of your workout is to incorporate it as a superset or as a warm-up. Now, I did this with my rear delts when they sucked a long time ago. I would start every pressing day with a few sets of bent raises, superset with other like rotator cuff work to get blood in my shoulders. It made the movement feel a lot better. My pressing felt really good. It got a lot of blood in my shoulders, but also it started to develop that muscle, and I was less likely to skip it or put it on the back burner than if I put it at the very end. It's super easy to throw grip work in between other sets, especially if you're doing stuff where you are using straps. There's no reason you can't do grip work in between sets of deadlifts, sets of squats, things that aren't demanding. If your forearms are really struggling, there's no reason you can't do wrist curls as the first thing in your arm workout because you're not going to skip the curls. You're going to skip the little wrist extensions that you get really disillusioned with. You're like, this is stupid. What's this doing? You don't get excited. You don't get aggressive. You don't have to do the nut in order to actually do reverse wrist curls. So doing the ones you're not passionate about first, easy way to make sure you get that work in. Now, the second bit of advice is more technical, and that's to make sure that you're working your actual grip and not friction. This is a big thing coming from strongman where we try to optimize friction because you can really game it to make your hand a bit more tacky. I'll soak my hands in chalk for like 15 minutes, get a nice leathery texture to my hands. I don't want any moisture. So when I wrap into the bar, it actually catches onto the skin. And as my hand straightens out, it pulls all the skin with it. It hurts like shit, but it's a much stronger position when you're trying to do like an 800-pound frame carry without any grip assistance. The thing is, that is a really shitty way to train your grip. If that's what you do on your weekends as part of strongman training, you do it for a very long time, yes, your grip will get better, but the more direct way is to attack the actual musculature, not the skin, not working friction. And you do that by putting your hand in a position where the muscles are going to be stressed sooner. They're disadvantaged. They're not going to be able to handle as much weight or go for as long. The easy way to do that for your grip is to go open hand or to go in your fingertips. So if you're doing holds, I actually recommend people start with doing holds in their fingertips instead of trying to really focus on getting the strongest grip possible that they can. I also recommend, where possible, people incorporate exercises that utilize an axle. You can get fat grips. You can wrap a towel around a barbell. This is actually a very old school trick I don't see anybody using, but you can bring a couple of thick hand towels and wrap them around the bar to add extra taxation to your hands and forearms when you're doing other movements. Now, I recommend that for low stakes movements where the weight isn't going to be heavy. You're not doing big compound movements. So probably not rows or deadlifts or cleans. Definitely for arm work, you'd be very surprised what wrapping a towel around a barbell or dumbbells will do when you're doing French presses and skull crushers, when you're doing barbell curls, when you're doing machine curls. Having that thicker handle and actively squeezing the entire time, it's not the friction of your skin. It's actually going to be the muscles in your fingers, your hand, and your wrist that are working overtime to support that weight in a way that they're not used to. Easy way to get some extra stimulus in without having to derail your entire training. Now, I don't recommend you do that for like every exercise. That's going to be overkill. Pick one exercise and throw it in every time you come back to that muscle group. Super easy way to add some guaranteed work in, and you'll be surprised how quickly you adapt to that. Now, the third thing is for grip strength specifically. Again, don't complicate. You just want to focus on carries and holds. Now, everybody loves farmer's walk, like Josh Bryant. A lot of people push farmer walks as being this magical cure-all exercise. I've been doing farmer walks competitively for a very long time. I probably don't love them as much as other people do. There's certainly benefits, but even as a test of grip strength, there's a lot of systemic fatigue. So even as a strongman, I have a hard time doing them enough to get my grip better without having that take away from the other stuff I have to do throughout the week, squats and deadlifts and everything else, other event work. So actually, I prefer to focus on things that are more grip specific if that is in fact the thing that's holding me back. I recommend very long rucks. Nobody likes doing this. Everybody rolls their eyes. People say, yeah, it's a good idea, and then they skip it because it's hard. But if you've got a little bit of humility to lighten the weight and you got the willingness to suffer, you can get so much out of doing long rucks. And I mean like 200 feet plus in a single carry. In fact, there's no reason you couldn't work up to longer distances. If you picked up a pair of kettlebells and aimed to carry them around a track, you will notice over time as you adapt, yes, your grip will get stronger, your endurance will get better, your forearms will get thicker. But for now, if you're a guy that's used to doing 200 pound per hand farmer walks for like 50-foot sprints, drop it to 95 pounds, see if you can go 200 or 300 feet carrying it in your fingertips. Very different experience. And like I said, it's not going to blow you out for everything else you do. Holds, of course, are also very viable. You can hold from pull-up bars, you can hold dumbbells, you can do static stuff if you don't have room to move around, no rule that says you have to move. They tend to be psychologically a little bit more boring. And I still recommend really long duration. 45 seconds to a minute is like minimum, and you can even aim for longer. There's no reason you can't go a minute and a half, 2 minutes on holds. And if you do a few of them in a session, try to hold for longer, add weight when you can. Again, you will be absolutely amazed at the rate at which your hands get better at holding on to shit. But again, they suck, they're boring, they're uncomfortable, so people don't do it. Now, tip number 4, this is going to be more specific to your forearm size. Long-term, getting your hands in grip stronger is absolutely going to make your forearms thicker. It just will. Now, you're going to get more accelerated growth if you mix and match these elements, because getting your forearms bigger through things like wrist flexion and extension is also going to expedite the rate at which your hands get stronger. They very much are going to go hand in hand. Now, getting your forearms thicker, easiest thing in the world. It really is just wrist flexion and wrist extension. Now, using wrist rollers, that's a staple and they're fine, but people tend not to do them frequently. They're kind of weird to progress. It's like, do I just try to roll it a few more times? Do I just try to add a little bit more weight? Sometimes it's really hard to add weight to. There aren't a lot of people that get passionate about wrist rollers. So keeping it to something that's a little more straightforward where you can track metrics, you can count for reps, it's easier to scale weight. I am a fan of just good old fashioned curls. Now, the most common type of wrist curls, and these are completely fine, either going on your forearms or on a bench, weight in front of you, okay, reverse wrist curls, and then regular wrist curls. Using free weights, bands, cables, that's my preference. You can absolutely use a straight bar, though it's just more awkward to set up. It's more uncomfortable. You're pinned against the weight. it's not a power movement. It's more of a finesse movement. I actually prefer things where I can get kind of freedom of motion. So dumbbells, even cables and bands. Even with bands, they're super easy to set up. You don't have to worry about the accommodating resistance because the range of motion is too short for it to register. Over a long distance, a band will go from very light to very heavy, but over the couple of inches that you move your wrist, it's negligible. And it's easy. You can carry it with it wherever you go. Again, it's super easy to rig up as a superset as part of a warm-up. You could just clock your reps. And because the wrist does move in so many different ways, instead of just having a fixed implement, it's kind of nice to be able to experiment with different movements and see where your forearm really does start to cook. Now, one of my secret weapons, I got this from a buddy of mine, Daniel Lopez, is to do a wrist curl with the sleeve of a barbell while it's in the rack. I like this because, speaking of easy, the setup is insanely easy. It's just a barbell and a rack. I mean, you could do this on a bench, you could do this in a squat rack. Just if a bar is there, you grab the end and you have the open hand position, which we already like, right? Because you're more disadvantaged. So the bar isn't going to be like sliding around your sweaty palms. It's really this disadvantaged exposed position your hand's going to be in. And what you're going to do is you're going to execute a wrist curl just by curling the bar up. So you get all of the freedom of motion. It feels like it's hooked in a landmine, even though it's just in the rack. Super easy to scale. As an extra bit of spice, I like to let it roll in my fingers, close my hand, and then come through with the curl. That absolutely cooks you. It's a fantastic movement. It's super easy. And again, if you want to implement it the way I talked about, you're going to do it for higher reps. You're not going to be afraid of the burn. You're going to do it for multiple sets, multiple times a week. You're going to incorporate it in your training as is, either as a warm-up, as a superset with some other movement, and make sure you're getting to it 3 or more times per week, aiming to actively progress. If you can make it a staple, if you can prove to yourself that you can get better at these movements, your forearms are going to get thicker, your hands are going to get stronger, and eventually you will have earned the right to attack your grip in a much more specific way. Again, guys, thanks for watching. Big Dreams, Bad Jeans tee available at barbellapparel.com along with Bromley merch, and check out BaseStrengthAI. Follow me along as I use this cutting edge technology, the spirit of old school training, my programming knowledge in your back pocket. I am using it to prep for Worlds. You can follow me along on that journey at basestrength.com. Thanks so much, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.